Hey there, welcome back to Online Marketing Foundations. This is the first kind of substantive lesson in Module 4, convert your audience to buyers. And in this lesson, we're going to talk about how to design your sales plan. Because look, now that we're in the convert phase is about selling. It's about getting people to purchase products from you. But it's a different approach. We're not going to talk about like sell. That's not what we're doing. But in this lesson, we're actually going to be talking about let's create a plan. Let's put together what our plan is for how we're ultimately going to get these followers who hopefully at this point have become raving fans if you're doing commit and connect, right? How do we then convert them into buyers? So that's what we're going to talk about. How do we create that plan? And we're going to start, as always, with a truth bomb. And the truth bomb is, look, your best laid plans are likely to go out the window pretty quickly. But the act of planning is essential. And I want you to get this. This is kind of one of those paradoxes that a lot of people have trouble with, which is like people tend to do this thing where they plan, and then if they have to deviate from the plan, it drives them nuts. What I'm going to tell you is, especially when you're starting out, especially before things are really settled, you're going to make plans and then you're going to have to pivot because things are going to happen and you're like, well, that didn't work. And so you're going to have to kind of make a different plan and you're going to have to adjust things. But the idea here is that figuring out what you need to be doing and kind of thinking it through and planning it will, if nothing else, get you in the right mindset of looking at it the right way. And then you'll be able to pivot. But you actually have to have that plan and do the planning process because otherwise you're not being intentional. And you need to be intentional about conversion if you're going to do it the right way. So that's kind of the truth bomb we're starting with. But now let's talk about what you're going to learn. You're going to learn the key elements of selling and how decisions regarding one element of selling affect the others, and then how to build out kind of a sales plan and how to create it. So those are the things we're going to be talking about. And let's start with the key elements of selling. Basically, there are 3 parts to a sales plan: your offer, your messaging, and your funnel. That's it. You got to have a killer offer, you got to have good messaging, and you have to have the right funnel. And when you have those 3 pieces together, working together, you will have the kind of the system you want to actually convert followers into buyers. So we're going to dive into each one of these a little bit more. And just so you know, basically in the next lessons, we're going to go through offer, messaging, and funnels in more detail. But to give you a quick overview, the offer is the combination of the product, the price, the bonuses, the guarantee, and any other kind of terms of the deal. A lot of people think in terms of product, and you want to think in terms of offer because the offer is the overall thing, the offer you're presenting to people saying, here is the deal. Do you want it? Yes or no? And that's kind of the offer. And so you need to think about all of those different pieces. That's your offer. Then the messaging. The messaging is what motivates people to act and is weaved through your content, through your sales page, and all of the other sales collateral that you'll create. Emails, ads, all of that stuff. But your messaging is something that goes deeper. It's something that isn't just about the sales process in a formal way. And we'll talk about this when we get to the messaging lesson, that it's things you're doing months before people are even thinking about buying. So you have to kind of do it. And again, hopefully that gets you to understand why it is that I'm saying you need to be planning this stuff and creating a plan in advance. And then finally, the funnel, the funnel is the how. It's the process by which your audience will experience your messaging and hear your offer. So we've all heard of these things, but it really is kind of this overall, what is the path? What are people going to go through? What are they experience first, second, third, et cetera? And kind of coming down this funnel from, just kind of a person who is in your world to someone who is actually considering and hopefully then buying your offer. So that's the funnel piece. So those are the pieces. Now let's talk about the fact that the 3 elements are interconnected. What I want you to get is that the elements of selling are not independent building blocks that you can simply bolt together. And what I mean by that is that you can't simply go out and say, okay, well, here's the offer. I want to make this kind of offer and I want to make use this kind of funnel and I want to use this kind of messaging. You have to think through how does one of those affect the others. And again, the big part of this is that your decisions about your product, part of the offer, what you're going to offer will affect the funnel that is right for you. To put it very simply, like if you're selling a $7 thing, you're not going to use a really long, complicated funnel. That would be crazy. On the other hand, generally, if you're selling something that's thousands and thousands of dollars, you have to think through what are the different things I need to get across. And so that's kind of, what you need to be thinking about, how the product and the offer you're making is going to affect the funnel that is the right choice. And there are some things that are pretty common, and we'll talk about these as examples maybe when we're in the funnel section. But you have to think about, you got to match the funnel to the product. So that's kind of one piece. But also the funnel you use will impact the messaging, especially kind of when your audience hears each piece. And what I mean by that is like, you have to pick, okay, how am I going to present these messages and help people understand these things, and then present the offer that will affect the win, right? I mean, as a simple example, if you're using a webinar, that affects kind of the different pieces of messaging and where they all flow and what happens when. So that's what I'm saying, where all of these things are kind of interconnected, and you have to understand that. Basically, what you're doing is you're creating a customer journey. It's not a one-off thing. And the journey is affected by all of these different things that you're thinking about here. What is the offer? What is the messaging? What is the funnel? Those things affect each other. And also, so that you understand, you can't make decisions about your content that you're just putting out on a regular basis. Like we talked about content in the last module. Well, really, you need to be thinking about what is your sales plan, to be thinking through what content do you need to be creating on a regular basis. Because candidly, the funnel choice and how you decide that you're going to sell people into your product will affect the content that you're creating on a regular basis, because it might mean that some forms of messaging need to be happening every single week. That's something you need to be thinking about. So that's kind of what I want to get across on that piece. So it's all kind of interconnected. Now, let's talk about how you build your sales plan and how you kind of put together a plan all together. So normally you begin with the end in mind, and I guess that's kind of what we're doing. But what I'm going to say is you're going to start with the offer. You have to figure out what is your offer. And I want to be clear. Remember, you're not coming up with this out of nowhere. You're coming up with this based upon what you've heard from your audience through the work that you've done during the commit phase and even during the connect phase. When you're doing that, you'll be having discussions, you'll be having conversations, you'll be sensing what your audience wants, and then you're going to figure out your offer based upon that. So you start after you've kind of gotten the feel for the market, et cetera. Then you come up with what your offer is. And what I want you to get is you can't build a sales plan until you know what you're selling. I mean, that's just a reality. You can't say, well, I'm going to do a 3-part video series. I haven't figured out what I'm selling yet, but I know that's how I'm going to sell stuff. That would make no sense. It just doesn't work that way. You start with the what, and then start thinking about the how. So the first thing you have to do is figure out your offer. So that will be the next lesson in this module. We're going to talk about that piece so that you really understand it and can kind of think back from there. Then you define the messaging. So after the offer is done, then you move to your messaging. So again, once you've defined your product, you can kind of outline the different messages you will need people to hear to get to the point that they will be ready buyers. And so again, that messaging depends on the offer. So you have to have the offer. Then once the offer's together, then you come up with what are the different messages. And messaging isn't one thing, it's multiple pieces. And we'll go into that in a couple lessons. We'll go into that so you'll understand it. Once you've done that, you design the funnel. So again, after the product, you picked your product and your offer. And then after you've kind of laid out your messaging, then you design the funnel. And what you do is you pick the funnel and kind of you're slotting in where the content and messaging and offer fit. And so this is kind of complicated, and in the abstract it can be tough, but let's say you figure out here are the different messages I need people to hear before they're going to be willing to buy. Well, then once you know that and you pick A funnel that makes sense for that, you can start saying, okay, well, this first message, I need to get to them here, and then the second message here, and then the third here. And you kind of put it into this journey, like I said. And so that's what you're doing when you're kind of mapping out the funnel in the last step. And look, we're going to talk about each of these steps in the following lessons. This was just an overview, so you kind of had a sense and could think through the planning process. Once you go through the next lessons, it's going to make sense more and you'll be able to do this, but you need to understand the process and be thinking through how to convert and how to create a sales plan in a very systematic way. So that's what you're working on here. Again, takeaway here is that selling isn't haphazard. You have to create a plan that includes the offer, the messaging, and the funnel, and you have to be intentional about all of it. And that's what I really want you to be doing. And again, I want you to be clear. You're going to come up with a plan, you're going to try it, and it's not going to work. Now, maybe you'll be lucky and the first thing you try will work. But if you're like most entrepreneurs, you'll try things and they won't work. It might be that the offer is wrong. It might be that the messaging is wrong. Sometimes it might be that the funnel is wrong. That's normally not the problem. Normally it's either the offer or the messaging, but you're going to have things that don't work, and that's okay. I want you to go into it expecting that, because some people make it seem like, well, if you just follow these 7 steps, you're guaranteed to sell. That's not the way it works. So I want you to know that and understand that kind of if something doesn't work, you need to go back and say, okay, what was wrong? Was it the offering? Was it the messaging? What was it? And do that. But look, here's what I want you to do. You need to be intentional about your plans to convert your audience to buyers. If you will do that, you will be way better off. So that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll talk about how to define your offer.